Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to take a look at Peter's collection, and this collection is one that has quite a history to it. I mean, it goes back a number of years. This first one up in the upper left there is a Raymond Weil that he bought in 1987. And it's a quartz watch, but it's a very pretty watch. It's a good looking watch. By the way, too, before I forget, I've got on my this is my El Raw, and it'll be coming up later for a reason. I'll be talking about some aspect of it. Okay, this next one is on to the right is a Casio Illuminator. And it's a quartz watch, and it lights up. You can tell the time with it. Down on the bottom is a Seiko V. Seiko V is one of my favorite Seikos. When they first came out, I want to say 1967, but I'm probably wrong. They had a number of innovations in them, and they're really a terrific watch. It's a Pilot's Type B from 1941, the dial on it. It's a very interesting dial, you know, which kind of, who was flying planes in 1941 with that dial would be interesting too. And it's a step away from quartz, and it's to mechanical horology, and I think it's a perfect step. I really like Seiko Vs. All right, and the next one to it is another. It's a very pretty Seiko, and it's a very rugged one, very reliable. Peter describes it as a workhorse, and I like the looks of it. All right, going on, this next group of watches, the first one is a Citizen Echo Drive Titanium. And this one has a solar power, and he got bought it on a bid on eBay, bought it for $60, and I sort of pulled in on it because I wanted to show the dial. But if you pull back on that Casio, our Citizen, you have a really gorgeous looking watch. Well, when Peter got it, the bracelet fell apart, and so he had to go and get some pins and everything else. It became a project to put it back together, and he did an excellent job. And he said it was sort of fun, and I like that. I mean, if you're a watch collector, if something breaks and you can fix it yourself, believe me, it's more fun than anything you can imagine. At least it is for me. Okay, next is a good old G-Shock, and G-Shocks they're tough. This one's solar. It's a 6-band atomic, and so what that means, it's atomic times standard radio broadcast. So you get picks up a radio broadcast and makes sure it's the right time, atomic time. You don't get, I don't think there's anything more accurate. And that's sort of a cool watch to have as for a G-Shock. And the G-Shock was $83, and you know, that's a good price for that watch. The next one is called a Marathon Czar Diver. Now, it's a quartz watch, and it was a pretty hefty price on it. It was $478, but it's a very good looking diver, and it looks like the kind of diver that you can actually go diving with. It's got the date about 4:30, which I happen to like. A lot of people don't like it. It drives them nuts for some reason. I think it's a perfect place for it. You know, what else is going on at 4:30 in your life? Okay, now we make a big step for this next one. This is a Nomos Orion. And the Nomos Orion has one of the most interesting movement stories that I can think of. And it has a movement that Nomos calls alpha. It is an in-house movement. Okay. if you find a Sellita clone of an ETA, and there are a lot of them, believe me, you treat it as an ETA. Now here, the alpha is a very interesting movement. So let's take a look at it. The ETA 7001 is really a Peizu 7001. Now the 7001 is one of the better pickups of ETA. It's one of the better movements. It's thin, and it's considered a pretty good movement. It's in this group of movements that they call their Mechaline specialties. And if you take a look at the bottom, you can see the Nomos Alpha. And if you take a look at the left side, the two on the left side, the top and the bottom. Hang on, let me fix that. Oops. Okay. That ought to fix it now. Now you can see it a little better. By moving it around, you can see where they're very similar. In fact, they're almost identical. There are very few things on it that are different. The cuttings on the base plate and a few things like that are different. But if you look carefully, the screws are in the same place, and pretty much it's a Nomos ETA 7001 or an ETA or Peizu 7001. Now, in the past I've mentioned this, and a lot of times I've got some Nomos owners who get furious with me. They say it's an in-house movement, and it is an in-house movement, and so it meets all of the in-house movements of the standards that Nomos has. I don't know if they're better than worse than what ETA has, but it is a Nomos. Now, that's a good thing. Okay, it is an in-house movement, but it's the same thing as an ETA 7001. Now, why did they do this? I mean, if you can have an in-house movement, make an in-house movement. And by the way, Nomos has some great movements that were both designed and produced in-house. This one was not designed in-house. It was another design. It was basically a Peizu 7001, okay, which has got a good reputation. It had a good reputation before it was taken over by ETA. ETA renamed it ETA 7001, and it still has a good reputation. This guy has a Peizu 7001 in it, or an ETA 7001. I'll talk about that in a second. Okay. All right. So, good or bad? Yeah, it's not a bad thing, I don't think. I really don't. What I think is that you have a movement that you had a lot of other watches that had been actually ETA-based watches. And so ETA said, well, we're not going to sell them to anybody. We're all going to be, except, Swatch watches and so forth, or Swatch-owned watch companies. And so a lot of other watch companies said, hey, we better do something else. Some got Sellitas, some Soprod, and some went and made their own. And this is one of them that went and made their own. Okay, so let's take a look at that. I mean, the good or the bad of it, you got an in-house movement. And it meets like I said, it has all of the standards that Nomos has. Now, here is my El Leroy. It's the El Leroy Grandos Meilleur Mécanique Extra Plot. Extra plot means extra thin. Well, the way they got it to be extra thin is that they put in Peizu 7001. They put in exactly the same movement. Now, in the past, before ETA became, a bad word, the El Leroy used to have movements by Peizu. It was, you go back in the 1950s and you'll find a lot of El Leroy watches. what's happened was that with the high horology, or the notion of high horology, people didn't want movements by somebody else. All right, now this is a watch that makes claims to high horology, but then they put in this cheap movement. I'm very upset with them over that. Now it's a decent movement. I mean, it's got like a time only, and doesn't even use the small seconds that are in the 7001. All right, now so they weren't forthcoming about it. That was not very happy, but. So if you have an alpha, at least you have something that was made by someone else. Now, if you look at that El Lara, they made the plate a little fancier, and they called it El Lara. They changed the caliber name to 1025, so it's L1025. Oh, right, but it's the same. It's not. They didn't even. It's not an in-house version of the ETA Peizu 7001. Furthermore, when we take a look at the fits, on the left there, here you got a 42 millimeter case, and you have this little movement inside of it. Now, if you look at the Orion that Peter got, that's a pretty good fit. It's a 35 millimeter, and the 10.5 leagues, which is 2.5. I'm sorry, which is 23.3 millimeters. That's a much better fit. But you put 23.3 millimeters in a 42 millimeter case, and it looks like a BB in a tin can. So, yes, this was a clone. The Alpha is a clone of the ETA 7001, which is simply a copy of, they probably even use this, it's the Peizu 7001. Okay, so the thing about that is that there's, calling it the Alpha, I don't know. It's not a bad thing, and especially the way that one fits. And especially because I really like and have a great deal of respect for Nomos watches. I really like Nomos a lot, but you need to understand these things. And especially when you're going to spend a lot of money on a watch. This was Peter's most expensive watch, and it's a good watch. Don't get me wrong, okay? The other thing about it, too, that's really good, two things. First of all, this thing stopped. So I went down to my local watchmaker, and they love anything that smacks of ETA. They do. And $30 later, this thing was working fine, and they took a look at a Valjoux that I had on another watch. $30 for both of them. I mean, that's the good news. The other good news, and to me this is very good news, the watch runs at 3 hertz instead of 4 hertz. So, I mean, when you look at all of your tip-top brands, I mean, like FP Journe and Rutenlanen and H. Moser and all of these really great brands, they have their movements run at a slower vibration per hour. Below the 4 is considered the standard, but this one runs at 3, and so that's another thing. It's sort of like, well, I've sort of been going for the lower, lower VPH. Okay, well, this has got that too, so that's another advantage of it. So you got 2 advantages. One, you got cheaper watchmakers, and believe me, I spent a fortune on them. And second of all, you have something that's probably it's not gonna need as much service because it's running slower. Okay, let's go on. The rest of Peter's collections, he's got a Seiko Alpinist, $375, what he bought it for. That's, if not my favorite Seiko, one of my tip-top favorite Seikos. I love that watch. I like the looks of it. I like everything about it. It's like my 2 favorites are the 5, which is the old, very simple one, and I like the Alpinist. And Peter's got both of them. Now, this last watch is the Armand Nicolet, or Nicolet. It's called the Hunter Complete Calendar B, automatic. It's got an ETA 2824-2 in it, and it's modified with a Dubois Depros 9201. It's with a complication module. This, I like the looks of the watch. You want a complicated watch, you want a decent price. The Armand Nicolet will do it as such. All right, nice watch. Okay, standard horology, nothing wrong with that. Now then, what would I recommend? What would I go with a collection like this? Because Peter's gotten up into, for at least price-wise, which you can find a good high horology watch if you look around and you're patient. What I usually suggest is trying to find something like a Jaeger-LeCoultre. Now, I was going to say, well, you know, be careful of the vintage. There's nothing wrong with them, but when a watch gets older, it's older. I mean, it may not work as well. But one of the advantages that Peter has, the Orion that he got, is 35 millimeter. Now, a lot of people like the larger ones, 37, 38, 39, 40, and so forth. I like mine around 40, a little higher, a little lower is fine with me. Peter's got another size, though, that he feels comfortable with. And the good thing about that is that you can find some really good buys on the smaller size watches. And so if you're comfortable with a 35 millimeter, and apparently Peter is, then you can find some really good buys. And so just sort of look around for something. I think Glashütte Original, this would be a place you could look. You can look at, I mean, you can look at Holy Trinity, Vacheron Constantin, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, from some of the smaller ones. They're a little more difficult to find, let's say, right in the same range that you paid for the Orion, but you might want to start looking for that. This is an area that you got to be careful in, too. Generally with watches like the Glashütte Original, you can still find some really good buys on that. Same thing with Jaeger-LeCoultre. Find some fantastic buys on Parmigianis. Now, I mention those because those are watches that I pretty much trust. They're not going to have somebody else's movement in it, okay? And they're not going to have a clone of a movement. They're going to have a true high horology movement. So that would be my suggestion. Otherwise, I really like this. I like the selections. I like Peter's selections of watches. And so I don't have a great deal to tell him. And so keep on keeping on. Now, I'd like your suggestions too. What you have some ideas? Say, hey, Peter, this is what I got. This is something you might like. Also, too, this is an invitation to subscribe if you like. And until next Friday, this is Bill Sanders with Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.